file landed on his desk with a dull thud. Commander Vance Carter looked up from his morning coffee, eyes narrowing at the classified folder. 65 years had weathered his face into a landscape of experience, each line earned in service to his country. He didn't need to open it to know something had gone terribly wrong. "She's been dark for 48 hours, said Admiral Mitchell, standing rigid in the doorway of Carter's modest Virginia home office. "No contact since insertion." Carter set down his mug, steam rising between them like a specter. The morning sun cast long shadows through the blinds, striping the room in bars of light and darkness. "Catherine Sullivan doesn't miss check-ins," Carter said, voice steady despite the concern rising in his chest. He opened the file, scanning the details with practiced efficiency. His former student, now Lieutenant Commander in Naval Intelligence, and one of the few female Navy SEALs, had vanished during a covert operation in international waters off the coast of Somalia. "That's why I'm here, Vance. We need your insight." Carter's weathered fingers traced the mission parameters outlined in the file. Operation Poseidon, a smuggling ring moving stolen American military hardware through international waters. Kate had been tasked with tracking the shipment and placing a tracker. Simple for someone with her skills. "Who authorized this solo insertion?" Carter asked, a dangerous edge in his voice. "That would be me." The voice belonged to Admiral James Harrington, who stepped into the room with the confidence of a man used to command. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of polished appearance that belonged more to Washington than the battlefield. "She's one of our best, Carter. You trained her yourself." Carter closed the file, his blue eyes cold as Arctic waters. Even the best need backup. 200 miles away in the middle of the Indian Ocean, Catherine Sullivan's lungs were beginning to burn. Her left eye had swollen shut, blood caking her temple where a pistol butt had connected hours earlier. Her wrists were bound behind her back with thick zip ties that bit into her flesh. Her ankles shackled to a concrete block. The salt air stung her cracked lips as she knelt on the rusted deck of a cargo ship flying no flag. 3 men stood over her. The one smoking, she'd mentally labeled the smoker, spoke with an Eastern European accent. Another wore the dead eyes of a mercenary German by her assessment. The third, the one who'd orchestrated her capture, remained silent, watching with analytical detachment. Kate didn't waste energy speaking. They'd spent 2 days trying to break her, asking about routes, schedules, encryption keys. Who else knew about the shipment? She'd given them nothing. Not her clearance level, not her team designation. "The Americans won't find you out here," said the smoker, exhaling a plume that dissipated into the night air. "No satellites tracking this vessel. No rescue coming." The silent one stepped forward. In the harsh deck lighting, Kate recognized him instantly, though she kept her face neutral. Dmitry Volkov, former Spetsnaz. The scar running along his left cheek was unmistakable. "You know," Volkov finally spoke, his accent thick but precise. "Commander Sullivan, I almost respect your resilience." Almost. Kate's mind flashed back to Carter's briefing on Volkov during her training. Berlin, 1989. The Cold War operational files listed him as one of the most dangerous Soviet operatives, now a free agent selling his expertise to the highest bidder. "She knows protocol," Volkov continued, addressing his companions. "By now her handlers will have marked her as compromised. They won't risk assets to recover a lost intelligence officer." He knelt down, his face inches from hers. "You were abandoned the moment you missed your first check-in." Kate remained silent, her breathing measured despite the pain radiating through her body. She focused on the rhythmic roll of the ship, calculating drift patterns, current speeds. "Does she have a tracker?" the German mercenary asked. Volkov reached down, roughly grabbing her by the jaw, turning her face toward the harsh deck lights. "We've swept her 3 times. She's clean." They hadn't checked the wetsuit liner properly. The ceramic blade sewn into the seam behind her knee wasn't for comfort. Waterproof, undetectable to metal scanners. Standard seal backup equipment. But that wouldn't matter if she hit the water wrong. "Time to conclude our business," Volkov said, stepping back. He nodded to the others. "Make it look like an accident if the body washes up. No evidence of interrogation." The German grabbed the concrete block and dragged it toward the edge of the deck. Kate's knees scraped raw against the grating. She didn't fight yet, couldn't afford to waste the oxygen. The ocean opened up beneath her like a black grave. "The sharks will finish what's left," the smoker said, kicking the block over the edge. Kate went with it, plunging into darkness. Back in Virginia, Carter leaned against his desk, memories of 1985 washing over him. The Mediterranean operation had gone sideways in similar fashion. His team's surrounded communications cut. That sinking feeling when you realize no extraction is coming. "Admiral," he said, addressing Harrington directly, "I want in on the search and rescue." Harrington exchanged glances with Admiral Mitchell. "Vance, with all due respect, you're 65. You've been retired for 7 years. And I still run 5 miles every morning and qualify expert on the range twice a year," Carter countered. "More importantly, I know Sullivan better than anyone in your command structure. I know how she thinks." "This isn't about your capabilities," Harrington said smoothly. "This is about protocol. We have active teams spinning up now." Carter studied Harrington's face, noticing something that troubled him. A lack of urgency, a certain rehearsed quality to his concern. "James," Carter said, using the Admiral's first name deliberately, "when we served together in the Gulf, you told me the most valuable intelligence asset is the one everyone else has written off." He paused, letting the words hang between them. "Have you already written Kate off?" Harrington's expression hardened. "We're doing everything by the book." "The book gets people killed," Carter responded, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of decades of field experience. "Tell me about the mission parameters. What was she after?" Admiral Mitchell cleared his throat. "Classified weapons systems. Missing from Naval Storage Facility in Norfolk 3 months ago. Our intelligence tracked them to a smuggling operation moving through the Horn of Africa. Sullivan was sent to confirm and place trackers." "And who knew about this operation?" "Strictly need to know," Harrington answered quickly. "My office, Mitchell here, Director Reynolds at CIA and the insertion team." Carter nodded slowly, years of operational paranoia triggering warning bells. He'd seen too many missions compromised by leaks. Too many good operators lost because someone talked who shouldn't have. "I need access to her last known coordinates," Carter said, "and I need it now." The water swallowed Kate whole. The weight dragged her faster than her lungs were ready for, but she didn't panic. She'd trained for this. She twisted just enough to take the pressure off her ribs and let the block pull her vertical. 10 feet, 20, 30. Light vanished completely. She opened her eyes in the crushing hardness, feeling the pressure building in her ears as the ocean squeezed down around her. Her lungs burned, but her mind remained clear. This was survival now. The fundamental equation taught to every SEAL: find a way or make one. Kate tilted her wrists, fingers searching behind her back for the blade in the seam. Found it. She began sawing at the zip tie, each second precious as the concrete block dragged her deeper. 40 feet now. The dark wasn't silent, but alive with sound. The distant mechanical groaning of the ship above. The screech of bubbles against hull plating. The thunder of her own heartbeat in her ears. She focused entirely on the serrated ceramic edge pressed awkwardly to the tie. Her arms were going numb, but the blade was sharp. Training took over. The instructors at Buds had a saying that Carter would repeat during their specialized training: "If you can move a finger, you can still cut your way out." Kate had heard it first during underwater extraction drills. 12 feet deep in a training pool, blindfolded with concrete weights. Back then it had seemed like motivational nonsense. Now it was gospel. Her lungs contracted painfully. One more pull, one more scrape. Snap. The tie broke. She kicked off the block with both heels, yanking her knees upward. The chain tore at her ankles as it sank away into the abyss. Blood bloomed in the water around her. Her body screamed for oxygen. She didn't yield to the urge to inhale. Instead, Kate kicked again, angled upward, spinning slightly as the water thinned around her. Her left side burned with pain, but she pushed through it, reaching for the hidden flotation sleeve inside her belt. 5 feet from the surface, her hand found it. She yanked once. CO2 hissed into the bladder. Not a full life vest, nothing visible that would have been detected in their searches. Just enough buoyancy to keep her above water. Kate breached the surface like a missile mouth, wide lungs exploding as she finally dragged in air. The sea stretched vast and merciless in every direction. No lights, no horizon. The ship was gone. She treaded water movements slow and tight to conserve energy. Blood from her ankles mixed with the salt, stinging deep. One eye refused to open, but the other tracked upward where the stars still blinked against the black canvas of night. Kate rotated slowly using the curve of Orion to orient herself. She spotted a faint vertical shimmer miles away, an oil platform she'd noted during insertion. The mental calculations came automatically south by southwest, approximately 10 nautical miles. The beacon should have activated by now, planted on the hull during her covert boarding before she'd been discovered. A sticky transmitter with a magnetic core programmed to engage when her vital signs flatlined. Someone should be listening. If not, she'd float, burn, and bleed until the ocean claimed her. But the platform was still blinking in the distance. A fixed point, a destination. Kate adjusted the flotation sleeve under her ribs, stripped the cord from her wetsuit's inner seam, and tied it tight around her thigh to slow the blood loss. She whispered one of Carter's mantras from SEAL training: "Pain is noise. Noise is useful. Use it to think." Then she started swimming. In his home office, Carter was already moving. He'd spent decades creating backup plans, cultivating resources outside official channels. Before Mitchell and Harrington had even left his driveway, he was on a secure line to Mason Rodriguez, former Navy pilot and longtime friend. "Mason, I need your bird, full tank, no flight plan." The voice on the other end didn't hesitate. "The Sikorsky, she's ready whenever you are." "What's the play?" "Extraction, Indian Ocean. I'll brief you in person." Carter hung up, then moved to his safe. The combination came automatically. Sarah's birthday, the day he'd lost his wife to cancer 3 years earlier. Inside lay equipment no retired commander should possess: encrypted communication devices, identification papers, weapons permits that crossed international boundaries. His personal tablet chimed with an alert, a software program of his own design running in the background of several military networks. During his final years at Naval Special Warfare Development Group, Carter had created backdoor protocols into various tracking systems. Insurance policies, he called them. The alert showed a faint signal activating in international waters off Somalia. A specialized beacon, one of his own design, issued only to the operators he'd personally trained for high-risk operations. Kate's beacon. The signal pattern wasn't standard Navy protocol. It contained an embedded anomaly only Carter would recognize, a specific oscillation pattern mimicking one they developed during their training sessions. A deliberate message: compromise from within. Trust no one. Carter stared at the screen, a cold certainty settling in his gut. Kate was alive, and she'd discovered something that made her dangerous to someone with enough power to make her disappear. He packed quickly. Tactical gear, medical supplies, communications equipment that would operate beyond conventional networks. Within 20 minutes, his truck was heading toward a private airfield where Rodriguez kept his helicopter. The former Navy pilot had transitioned to private security contracting, maintaining a modified Sikorsky S-76 that could cover the necessary distance with additional fuel pods. As Carter drove, his mind reconstructed the briefing. Something about Harrington's demeanor had triggered old instincts. The admiral had seemed too composed, too ready to write off an intelligence asset as lost. Standard protocol would have deployed immediate search and rescue assets. Instead, Harrington had emphasized containment and intelligence assessment before recovery. Carter's phone rang. The caller ID showed Director William Reynolds, CIA. "I'm guessing Harrington already called you," Carter answered without preamble. "He mentioned you're taking an unhealthy interest in a classified operation," Reynolds replied, his tone measured. "Vance, we go back 30 years. Talk to me." "Sullivan's beacon is active, Will. She's alive in the water." A pause on the line. "How exactly do you know that those frequencies are encrypted and compartmentalized?" "I have my ways," Carter said. "The point is, someone needs to get to her before the elements do." "Or before someone else does," Reynolds added, his voice dropping. "Listen carefully. I can't speak openly, but there are concerns about compartmentalization on this operation. Concerns that came from Sullivan herself before she went dark." Carter's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Harrington." "I didn't say that," Reynolds replied carefully, "but I would suggest that extreme caution regarding who you trust with operational details. I'll run interference from my end as long as I can. I need satellite coverage of those coordinates." "Already done. Check your secure email. I never sent it. You never received it." Carter allowed himself the ghost of a smile. Even in Washington, there were still some people who understood the real meaning of loyalty. "Well, if this goes sideways, then we never had this conversation," Reynolds finished. Bring her home, Vance. The first 30 minutes in the water were manageable. Each stroke pushed Kate farther from where she'd been thrown overboard, blood from her legs dispersing in a faint trail behind her. The flotation sleeve kept her just above the chop, conserving precious energy. She moved with the current rather than fighting against it, an old diver's trick. But the temperature was dropping. Her fingers began curling involuntarily, teeth clenching against the cold. Every few minutes she'd blink toward the oil platform, still a distant pinpoint of light, and mutter to herself. 3 more strokes, then breathe. She was halfway through her 7th set when her body started doing the math without her permission. Core temperature dropping, blood loss steady but not critical, dehydration setting in despite floating in an ocean of water, energy expenditure versus remaining strength. She had perhaps 4 hours before hypothermia made the decision for her. Maybe 6 if luck was on her side. The platform remained at least 6 miles distant. Kate ran the calculation 3 times, hoping the numbers would change. They didn't. 70% chance she wouldn't make it. Not acceptable odds. She kept swimming anyway. Then the water changed. It was cooler suddenly, with a stillness beneath that didn't match the surrounding ocean. Kate stopped paddling, letting herself drift, senses alert. Silence settled around her. Then a low tug beneath her foot, followed by a gentle bump. Not a current, not debris, a presence. Kate turned slowly in the water, hands flat at her sides. Her left side throbbed with pain, but her vision was clearer now, scanning every faint shimmer under the moonlit surface. Then it appeared. 12 feet of muscle and silent purpose. An oceanic white-tipped shark. Blunt nose. Wide pectoral fins. A survivor's predator evolved to trail injured mammals for hours. It circled her once at a distance, then disappeared into deeper water. Seconds passed. The shark returned, closer this time. Kate didn't panic, didn't thrash. Carter's voice echoed in her mind from survival training. Stay vertical. Make eye contact. You're not prey unless you act like it. The shark veered right, then curved back, closing the distance further. Kate unstrapped the diving knife from her thigh. Her hands were stiff, grip weakening from the cold. She switched to a reverse grip and floated taller in the water, kicking once to present a larger silhouette. The shark disappeared again, then shot upward with sudden speed. Kate flared her left arm wide, turning just enough to lead it past her. The shark grazed her leg, tasting the blood already in the water. It rolled beneath her and looped around for another pass. Kate exhaled sharply, not from fear, but concentration timing her movement. She pivoted as the shark lunged again, this time more directly. She struck first knife, driving forward into the gill slit as it passed. The shark thrashed violently. Its flank collided with her hip, nearly submerging hers. The blade tore free and salt water filled Kate's mouth as she fought to maintain position. She surfaced, coughing chest, burning knife still gripped in her hand. The shark circled again, slower now. Movements less certain. Kate activated the emergency flare clipped to her belt, the chemical reaction creating a sudden point of heat and light underwater. The shark followed the decoy as it drifted away into the darkness. Kate watched until the ocean settled around her, heart pounding against her ribs. She'd won that encounter not by strength, but by discipline. Exactly as Carter had taught her. She reset her orientation toward the platform and resumed swimming, each stroke more painful than the last. The Sikorsky S-76 thundered over the Atlantic Rodriguez, pushing the engines beyond recommended limits. Carter sat in the co-passenger seat, studying satellite imagery on his tablet. The coordinates from Kate's beacon placed her approximately 200 miles off the Somalia coast. The helicopter would need to refuel at a friendly forward operating base in Djibouti before making the final approach. You really think she survived being thrown overboard? Rodriguez asked, voice crackling through the headset over the rotor noise. Kate Sullivan doesn't die easily, Carter replied, eyes still on the screen. She has training most SEAL teams don't even know exists. And you think someone inside the command structure sold her out? Carter looked up, expression grim. Her beacon is transmitting an old Berlin code. We used it during the final years of the Cold War, when we suspected Soviet penetration of our networks. She's telling me there's a mole. Rodriguez whistled low. That's a career-ending accusation without proof. Then we get the proof, Carter said simply. Kate wouldn't activate that protocol without certainty. His tablet chimed with an incoming encrypted message from Reynolds. Satellite thermal imaging showed a vessel matching the description of the smuggling ship moving at speed towards Somali territorial waters. More concerning was the notification of 2 Navy aircraft dispatched to the same region, with orders to secure any floating debris related to the operation. "They're trying to find her before we do," Carter murmured. "Who is they exactly?" Rodriguez asked. "That's what we need to find out." Carter switched channels on his secure communications device, inputting a series of codes that hadn't been used in years. "I'm calling in some favors. We need eyes on Kate's position before those Navy birds get there." The sun breached the horizon, thin slashes of pale gold spreading across the eastern sky. The water shimmered now, deceptively peaceful in the growing light. Kate squinted against the glare, lips cracked and bleeding jaw tight against the cold that had penetrated to her bones. Her breath came in ragged pulls. Stroke. Pause. Float. Repeat. The current had pushed her west of her intended path, but she kept adjusting, using the rising sun and the still visible flare of the oil platform to maintain orientation. Her body was approaching its limits. Hypothermia clouding her thoughts. Blood loss weakening her strokes. Then she heard it. A distant mechanical rhythm. At first just a vibration beneath the wind, then growing stronger. Rotors. Kate craned her neck, forcing herself upright against the flotation sleeve. A black dot cut across the morning sky, silhouetted against the sun. Not a commercial flight pattern. No contrails. Angular profile. Military aircraft heading her way. She reached for her belt with fingers she could barely control anymore, swollen white at the knuckles from cold exposure. But she still had her emergency signaling mirror attached to a retractable cord. She yanked it free, angling it to catch the sunlight. Flash. Pause. Flash. Flash. 3-second interval. Repeat. Inside the approaching helicopter, Navy search and rescue teams scanned the ocean surface. The sensor operator adjusted his equipment. "Sir, we've got a reflection at 11 o'clock low, too rhythmic to be natural wave scatter." The pilot banked slightly, adjusting course. "Could be a decoy. Intelligence report mentioned the smugglers have used mirror reflections on buoys before." "No registered buoys in these waters," the co-pilot countered. "And I'm reading a heat signature, barely registering but consistent with human thermal output." The pilot nodded, keying his secure comms. "Command, this is Seahawk 2. We have a potential contact at the designated coordinates. Moving to investigate." The response came immediately, at Admiral Harrington's voice clear through the static. "Seahawk 2, be advised. Approach with extreme caution. Subject may be in possession of classified materials. Secure the subject and any equipment before providing medical assistance." The pilot frowned, exchanging glances with his co-pilot. "Standard rescue protocol prioritized medical treatment above all else." "Copy that, command," he responded automatically, but his expression remained troubled. The helicopter descended rapidly, kicking up spray as it hovered 30 feet above the water's surface. The crew chief deployed the rescue basket, ready to initiate extraction. Kate looked up, relief flooding through her system as she recognized the Navy markings. She was going to make it. The mission wasn't lost. Then she noticed something unusual. The helicopter was maintaining unusual distance. The rescue swimmer hadn't deployed. Standard protocol for a wounded operative in open water would prioritize immediate medical stabilization in the water before extraction. Something was wrong. The helicopter circled once crew members, clearly visible, now examining her through binoculars rather than initiating rescue. Kate's training kicked in again. Trust nothing. Verify everything. She concealed the signaling mirror, allowing herself to appear more incapacitated than she actually was, slipping lower in the water. Through her good eye, she caught sight of the tail number on the helicopter. Then she saw the pilot speaking urgently into his headset, gesturing toward her. The helicopter crew was reporting to someone, taking instructions rather than initiating standard rescue procedures. At that moment, Kate knew with absolute certainty that she couldn't trust this rescue team. Somehow, the compromise within the Navy command structure extended further than she'd initially believed. The helicopter began lowering the rescue basket, finally initiating extraction. Kate made her decision. She had to get on board. She couldn't survive much longer in the water. But once aboard, she would be on guard. The information she carried about the weapons smuggling operation and the identity of the traitor within naval intelligence was too valuable to lose. As the basket touched the water 20 feet away, Kate began swimming toward it, mind racing through contingency plans. She'd need to identify allies within the crew, secure communications, and find a way to contact Carter directly. The chess game wasn't over. It was simply entering a new phase. At that exact moment, a second aircraft appeared on the horizon. Smaller civilian profile, moving at tremendous speed directly toward the Navy helicopter. Rodriguez pushed the Sikorsky to its operational limits, the airframe shuddering with the strain. "Navy search and rescue at our 2 o'clock, he shouted over the roar of the engines. "They found her first." Carter's expression hardened as he raised binoculars to study the scene below. "That's Harrington's team. If they get her aboard, we lose control of the situation." "What's the play?" Rodriguez asked, already anticipating Carter's response. "Get me close enough," Carter said, checking his equipment one last time. "I'm going in after her." "You're talking about interfering with a Navy rescue operation," Rodriguez warned. "That crosses a line, Vance." "The line was crossed when someone compromised Kate's mission and tried to kill her," Carter replied. "We do this now or we lose her forever." Rodriguez nodded once, banking the helicopter sharply and accelerating toward the Navy aircraft. "Hope you remember how to swim, old man." Carter allowed himself a grim smile as he prepared the jump gear. Some things you never forget. Below, Kate Sullivan watched the approaching civilian helicopter with a mixture of hope and apprehension. The Navy rescue team had also spotted it, their movements becoming more urgent as they attempted to accelerate the extraction. The battle for her survival had taken an unexpected turn, but as Carter had taught her during those long training sessions years ago, the ocean doesn't care about your plans. It only respects those who adapt. Kate adjusted her position, moving toward the rescue basket while keeping one eye on the approaching helicopter. Whatever happened next, she would be ready. The game of shadows that had begun on the cargo ship was far from over. It was about to enter its most dangerous phase. The Navy rescue helicopter hovered 30 feet above the churning waters, its rotor wash creating a chaotic pattern of spray and foam. Inside the aircraft, the crew chief watched through specialized optics as Kate Sullivan struggled toward the rescue basket. "Subject is female, matching description of missing intelligence asset," he reported into his headset. "Visible injuries to head and lower extremities. She's moving under her own power but showing signs of hypothermia." On the secure channel, Admiral Harrington's voice crackled with static. "Confirm identity before extraction. Security protocols are priority 1. The pilot glanced at his co-pilot, a flicker of concern passing between them. "Sir, with respect, subject appears to be in critical condition. Standard protocol is superseded by my direct order." Harrington cut in sharply. "This is a classified intelligence matter. Secure the subject first." Below, Kate fought against exhaustion as she reached for the rescue basket. Her fingers, numb from cold exposure, could barely maintain their grip on the metal frame. The water felt increasingly heavy around her, as though the ocean itself were trying to reclaim her. Through the spray kicked up by the rotors, she could make out the approaching civilian helicopter. Its speed and trajectory suggested a deliberate intercept course rather than coincidental presence. Friend or foe? Her tactical mind cycled through possibilities even as her body began to surrender to exhaustion. The knife wound from the shark encounter burned like fire in her leg. Kate gritted her teeth, pushing through the pain as she hauled herself half into the basket. The crew chief above was signaling, but she couldn't make out his instructions over the roar of the engines. Inside, the civilian Sikorsky Carter monitored the extraction through tactical binoculars, his expression hardening as he observed the Navy crew's unusual protocol. "They're stalling," he muttered to Rodriguez. "That's not standard rescue procedure." "What are they waiting for?" Rodriguez asked, maintaining a parallel course about half a mile from the Navy helicopter. "Authorization," Carter replied grimly. "They've been instructed to verify before extraction." "That gives us a window." He lowered the binoculars and moved toward the side door. "Get me within jump range." Rodriguez banked the helicopter, sharply accelerating on an intercept course. "Navy bird has spotted us. They're accelerating extraction." Carter finished securing his tactical harness, the familiar weight of the gear awakening muscle memories from operations decades past. "Call this in to Reynolds. Use the private channel. Tell him we've made contact and are proceeding with independent extraction." Below, Kate had managed to get herself fully into the rescue basket. The crew chief had begun the winch operation to bring her aboard when the pilot's voice came through his headset. Incoming civilian aircraft on intercept course. Looks like a modified S-76. The crew chief glanced up, spotting the approaching helicopter. Orders. Expedite extraction and prepare for immediate departure, came the response. Unidentified aircraft is to be considered hostile. The winch accelerated, lifting Kate more rapidly than the standard safe rate. She gripped the sides of the basket, fighting to maintain consciousness as the G-forces threatened to overcome her already compromised system. 30 feet above the ocean, the basket swayed violently in the rotor wash. Through her one good eye, Kate saw the civilian helicopter position itself almost parallel to the Navy aircraft, close enough that she could make out the figure positioned at its open door. Even through the spray and distance, she recognized that silhouette instantly. Carter. The recognition sent a surge of clarity through her fog of pain and cold. If Carter was here personally intervening, then her worst suspicions about internal compromise were confirmed. He'd received her coded warning and understood the implications. The basket reached the threshold of the Navy helicopter's side door. Hands reached out to secure it to pull her inside. Kate made her decision in a fraction of a second. She kicked away from the basket, pushing with her last reserves of strength, and plunged back into the ocean below. Carter didn't hesitate. The moment he saw Kate reject the Navy extraction, he leaped from the Sikorsky, executing a perfect dive into the churning waters 30 feet below. At 65, the impact hit harder than it would have in his younger years, but decades of conditioning absorbed the shock. He surfaced quickly, spotting Kate's head bobbing amidst the waves 20 yards away. The Navy helicopter above had gone into an immediate holding pattern, its crew clearly confused by the unexpected development. "Kate!" Carter called out, powerful strokes carrying him toward his former student. Kate turned toward the voice relief flooding her features as she recognized him. "Compromise," she managed to gasp as he reached her. "High level." "I know," Carter responded, wrapping a supportive arm around her. "Berlin protocol received. Reynolds is running interference." He reached to his belt, deploying a compact emergency flotation device that expanded instantly into a small raft. Above them, the Navy helicopter had begun lowering a rescue swimmer, while Rodriguez maintained position with the Sikorsky ready for extraction. A tactical standoff was developing in real time. Carter helped Kate onto the flotation device, quickly assessing her injuries. Hypothermia, blood loss, possible concussion, but her eyes remained alert, focused. "The weapons shipment," she said through chattering teeth. "Not just hardware, encryption modules, nuclear command protocols." Carter's expression darkened. "Who's the mole?" "Harrington," Kate whispered. "Saw documents during captivity. He's working with Volkov." The name hit Carter like a physical blow. Volkov, the Soviet operative he'd crossed paths with in Berlin during the final days of the Cold War. The man who'd sworn vengeance after Carter's operation had exposed a network of sleeper agents across Western Europe. The Navy rescue swimmer hit the water 30 feet away, immediately swimming toward them with powerful strokes. "Can you move?" Carter asked urgently. Kate nodded, her jaw set with determination despite her condition. Carter keyed his waterproof radio. Mason dropped the ladder, emergency extraction. The Sikorsky immediately descended, hovering just above wave height 50 yards away, a rope ladder unfurling from its side door. "Sir, we're under orders to secure that intelligence asset," the Navy swimmer called out as he approached. Carter positioned himself between the swimmer and Kate. "Lieutenant Commander Sullivan is under my protection by authority of Director William Reynolds, C.I." The swimmer hesitated, clearly caught between conflicting orders. "Make your choice, sailor," Carter said evenly, "but make it fast." The Navy swimmer's expression hardened with decision. "Get her out of here, Commander. Something's wrong with this op. Rescue protocols are being violated all over the place." Carter nodded once in acknowledgement. "Your commanding officer will receive a full briefing when this is resolved." With the swimmer's tacit permission, Carter helped Kate toward the waiting ladder. The Navy helicopter above maintained position, but took no further action to interfere with the extraction. Whoever was commanding the aircraft appeared unwilling to escalate to open confrontation with a civilian aircraft, especially one now identified as operating under CIA authority. Getting Kate up the ladder was an exercise in pure will. Her strength was nearly gone, hypothermia and blood loss having taken their toll. Carter supported her from below, both of them fighting against exhaustion as they climbed rung by slippery rung toward the hovering Sikorsky. Rodriguez reached down from the doorway, hauling Kate aboard with a grunt of effort. Carter followed, collapsing onto the deck beside her as Rodriguez immediately banked away, accelerating to maximum speed. "Medical kit under the rear seat," Rodriguez called over his shoulder. "Where are we headed?" Carter moved quickly to retrieve the emergency supplies, administering first aid to Kate's most serious injuries. "Not back to any Navy or U.S. facility. We need neutral ground until we sort this out." Kate's eyes fluttered open as Carter wrapped a thermal blanket around her. "The ship," she whispered. "Eastern heading, bound for Somali territorial waters." Carter nodded, understanding the implications. Once the smuggling vessel reached territorial waters, international jurisdiction would complicate any interdiction efforts. "Rodriguez, get us to the USS Texas. She's running silent about 60 miles northeast of here." "The Virginia-class sub," Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "How exactly do you propose we land on a submarine?" "We don't," Carter replied, administering an injection of antibiotics into Kate's arm. "But its commander owes me a favor. They can surface long enough for boat extraction." Kate gripped Carter's wrist with surprising strength. "They know I survived. They'll accelerate the timetable." Carter met her gaze with steady resolve. "Then we accelerate ours." On the secure satellite phone, Carter made contact with Captain James Torres of the USS Texas, explaining the situation in carefully coded language. Torres had served under Carter years earlier before transitioning to submarine command. "Extraction team will be waiting at these coordinates," Torres confirmed after a moment of consideration. "But sir, if this involves an admiral, I'll need more than your word to initiate action against a flag vessel." "You'll have it," Carter promised. "Full authorization from Director Reynolds within the hour. Just be ready to move when we arrive." Kate had drifted into semi-consciousness, her body finally surrendering to the trauma it had endured. Carter monitored her vital signs closely, administering intravenous fluids from the emergency medical kit. Her resilience was remarkable, but even the most highly trained operators had physical limits. As Rodriguez pushed the helicopter toward the rendezvous coordinates, Carter received an encrypted transmission from Reynolds. "Harrington knows you have her," the CIA director's voice came through clearly. "He's mobilizing assets under the guise of a security breach. Claims Sullivan is compromised and in possession of classified materials." "He's laying groundwork to discredit her testimony," Carter responded. "Exactly. I've put a temporary hold on his authority pending investigation, but it won't last long. The SecNav is already asking questions. We need time to secure the evidence and intercept that shipment." Reynolds paused before responding. "I can give you 12 hours of operational autonomy under CIA authority. After that, you're on your own, unless you've secured concrete evidence." "It'll be enough," Carter said with confidence he didn't entirely feel. "Keep Harrington contained as long as possible." The line went silent for a moment before Reynolds spoke again. "Watch your back, Vance. If Harrington really is compromised, he's had decades to embed allies throughout the command structure." The warning lingered in Carter's mind as he ended the transmission. Trust had always been a luxury in their profession. Now it was a potential liability. Kate stirred beside him, her training asserting itself even through the haze of pain and exhaustion. "The Berlin Code," she murmured. "You remembered." Carter smiled slightly. "Some lessons you don't forget." He leaned closer. "I need you to tell me everything you saw on that ship. Every detail about Volkov, the cargo, the crew. We have one shot at this." Despite her condition, Kate's recall was precise, her intelligence training evident in the methodical way she reconstructed the ship's layout, security protocols, and crew rotations. Carter listened intently, mentally mapping the approach they would need to take. "The encryption modules are in a secured container on the lower deck," she concluded. "Magnetic locks, dual authentication. Volkov keeps one key. The other—" she hesitated. "Was Harrington's," Carter finished for her, "which means Volkov has both now." Kate nodded weakly. "They're meeting a buyer in Mogadishu, someone with the technical capability to exploit the protocols. Creating a backdoor into our nuclear command and control systems," Carter said grimly. The implications were staggering. Not just weapons theft, but potentially compromising the entire strategic deterrence infrastructure of the United States. The Sikorsky began its descent toward a patch of ocean that appeared no different from the surrounding waters. But as they approached, a dark shadow materialized beneath the surface. The USS Texas was rising to perimeter depth just enough to deploy a RHIB extraction boat without fully surfacing. Rodriguez maintained a hover position 30 feet above the emerging submarine. "Ready when you are." Carter secured Kate to a rescue harness, preparing for the final stage of extraction. You first. I'll follow with our guest. The Urhib appeared 4 Navy SEALs in tactical gear, maintaining position alongside the partially submerged submarine. Rodriguez lowered Kate carefully on the rescue winch, the SEALs moving immediately to secure her as she reached their position. Carter followed moments later, giving Rodriguez a final salute as the cable detached from his harness. Get clear now. Maintain communications blackout until you hear from Reynolds. Rodriguez acknowledged with a thumbs up before banking the Sikorsky away, disappearing rapidly into the distance. The helicopter would be a liability now too easily tracked by naval radar. The Arhib accelerated back toward the submarine where a hatch stood open on the conning tower. Medical personnel waited to receive Kate, transferring her immediately to the vessel's medical bay. Captain Torres met Carter at the hatch, his expression grave. Commander, you realize what you're asking. Potential action against a vessel based on accusations involving an admiral. I'm asking you to fulfill your oath to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic, Carter replied steadily. The evidence will speak for itself. Torres studied him for a long moment before nodding once. Medical will stabilize Commander Sullivan. In the meantime, I've prepared the Tactical Operations Center for your use. My EXO tells me we've located a vessel matching your description on thermal imaging, maintaining course towards Somali waters. Time to intercept. At maximum silent running speed, approximately 4 hours. Carter's jaw tightened. Not much time to prepare an operation of this magnitude. I need direct communication with your SEAL detachment commander. And access to their armory. Torres raised an eyebrow. Planning on joining the boarding party yourself? I've got unfinished business with their commanding officer. Carter replied, his tone making it clear the subject wasn't open for discussion. In the medical bay, Kate was receiving emergency treatment. The ship's doctor had administered warm saline to combat hypothermia antibiotics for infection risk and was currently suturing the wound on her leg. She's stable but severely depleted, the doctor reported when Carter entered. Mild concussion, moderate hypothermia, blood loss, approximately 15% of total volume. Under normal circumstances, I'd recommend immediate evacuation to a full medical facility. These aren't normal circumstances, Carter replied. How soon until she's coherent enough for debriefing? The doctor frowned disapprovingly. Commander Carter, she needs rest, not interrogation. Doctor, the intelligence she carries may prevent a catastrophic security breach, Carter said evenly. I don't like it any more than you do, but we're operating against the clock. Kate's voice, weak but determined, interrupted them. I'm coherent enough now. Both men turned to find her eyes open, alert, despite the trauma evident in her pallor. The doctor began to object, but Kate silenced him with a look that carried the full weight of her SEAL training and experience. This is my mission, doctor. I'll rest when it's complete. Carter moved to her bedside, respect evident in his expression. Few operators could maintain such focus after what she'd endured. The Texas is moving to intercept the smuggling vessel. I need everything you can tell me about their defensive capabilities. Kate nodded, gathering her strength. 8 to 10 mercenaries, former military, primarily Eastern European. Small arms, likely some heavier weapons in the cargo hold. Volkov runs a tight operation. Regular patrol rotations, redundant communications. And Volkov himself, a shadow passed across Kate's features. Still dangerous. Age hasn't slowed him much. He's paranoid thorough. Never sleeps in the same location 2 nights in a row. Carries a Makarov and at least one backup weapon at all times. Carter absorbed the information, memories of their previous encounters in Berlin resurfacing. Volkov had always been methodical, patient, a product of rigorous KGB training before transitioning to Spetsnaz operations. The ship will enter Somali waters in approximately 4 hours, Carter said. Once that happens, our options become significantly more limited. You're planning an intercept. With the Texas's SEAL detachment, yes. Kate's eyes narrowed. You're going in yourself. Carter didn't deny it. Volkov and I have history. He'll be expecting standard Navy tactics. He won't be expecting me. I'm coming too, Kate stated flatly. Absolutely not, the doctor interjected. Commander Sullivan is in no condition for field operations. Carter studied Kate's determined expression, recognizing the same unyielding resolve he'd seen during her training years earlier. Kate, you've done your part, getting that intelligence to us, surviving against impossible odds. Let us take it from here. With respect, sir, this is still my mission, Kate replied, her voice strengthening with each word. I placed the tracker. I gathered the intelligence. I identified the mole. And nearly died in the process, Carter countered. Kate met his gaze directly. The mission isn't complete until those encryption modules are secured. You trained me better than to abandon an objective halfway. A ghost of a smile crossed Carter's face. Sometimes teaching had its disadvantages, particularly when your students absorbed your most stubborn qualities. 4 hours, he conceded. If the doctor clears you for limited operational status by then, we'll discuss your role, but equipped with the final call. Kate nodded, accepting the compromise. I'll be ready. In the submarine's Tactical Operations Center, Carter briefed Lieutenant Commander Jason Mitchell, leader of the SEAL detachment assigned to the Texas. Mitchell, a compact man with the focused intensity characteristic of special operators, absorbed the information without interruption. So we're looking at a covert boarding operation against a vessel carrying stolen military hardware commanded by a former Spetsnaz operator, possibly with support from elements within our own command structure. Mitchell summarized once Carter had finished. That's the situation, Carter confirmed. Mitchell exchanged glances with his team leaders. Sir, with all due respect, that's a hell of a mission to plan in 4 hours. Which is why we're starting now, Carter replied, unfolding a diagram of the cargo vessel based on Kate's detailed description. Commander Sullivan provided comprehensive intelligence on the ship's layout, security measures, and crew distribution. For the next hour, they developed the operation plan, identifying insertion points, clearing routes, and contingencies. The Texas would position itself ahead of the smuggling vessel's projected course, allowing the SEAL team to deploy via SDVs, miniature submersibles designed for covert insertion. Primary objective is securing the encryption modules, Carter emphasized. Secondary objective is capture of Dmitry Volkov for intelligence purposes. Mitchell nodded. And the rest of the crew? Detain if possible. Lethal force authorized if necessary. Carter's expression hardened. These men knowingly participated in the theft of critical national security assets. They're not innocent parties. As the planning session concluded, Torres entered the tactical center with updated intelligence. New thermal imaging from our passive sensors. The target has changed course slightly. They're pushing their engines harder than before. Carter studied the updated tracking display. They're making a run for territorial waters. They know we're coming. Harrington, Mitchell asked. Possibly, Carter acknowledged, or standard paranoia on Volkov's part. Either way, our timeline just contracted. How soon can your team be ready? Mitchell's response was immediate. 30 minutes for final equipment checks. We can deploy in the water in 45. Make it 30, Carter instructed. I'll meet you in the launch bay. As the SEAL team dispersed to prepare, Torres pulled Carter aside. Commander, I've just received direct orders from Fleet Command to stand down and return to regular patrol duties. Carter's expression remained neutral. Harrington's influence? The order came through proper channels, but the timing is suspicious, Torres confirmed. I'm currently experiencing convenient communications difficulties that will delay my response. His expression turned serious. But I can't stall forever. Once your team is in the water, you'll be operating without official sanction. Understood. We'll complete the mission regardless. Torres hesitated before adding, Reynolds sent an encrypted message. Harrington has convened an emergency security panel. He's building a case against Sullivan, claiming she's been turned by foreign intelligence. Carter's jaw tightened. Classic counterintelligence tactic. Discredit the accuser before they can present evidence. If this goes sideways, it won't be traced back to you, Carter assured him. My responsibility, my decision. In the medical bay, Kate was arguing with the doctor, already attempting to stand despite his objections. I need a tactical suit and access to the armory. Commander Sullivan, you've suffered significant trauma, the doctor insisted. You're in no condition for combat operations. I've operated in worse condition, Kate countered, wincing as she tested her injured leg. The pain was significant but manageable. SEAL training had included extensive conditioning to function through injury and extreme physiological stress. Carter entered in time to witness the standoff. Doctor, give us the room, please. Once they were alone, Carter assessed Kate's condition with a professional eye. She was pale, moving with obvious discomfort, but her eyes remained clear and focused. The intravenous fluids and emergency treatment had stabilized her vital signs. Mitchell's team is preparing for deployment, he informed her. Target vessel has accelerated toward territorial waters. We launch in 25 minutes. Kate straightened, meeting his gaze directly. I'm going. Carter didn't immediately refuse, which Kate recognized as significant. He was actually considering it. You'd be operating at severely reduced capacity, he noted. I know the ship's layout better than anyone, Kate countered. I've seen the security protocols firsthand. And Volkov knows me now. He won't be expecting me to return. Carter considered her arguments, weighing tactical advantage against the risk. Limited role, he finally decided. You provide guidance from the SDV initially. Once the vessel is secured, you can board if conditions permit. Kate nodded, accepting the compromise. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Carter replied grimly. We're about to execute an unsanctioned operation against a vessel carrying stolen military assets commanded by a former Russian Special Forces operator with decades of experience, while simultaneously dealing with a compromised admiral who's actively working to undermine us. A ghost of a smile crossed Kate's features. Sounds like Tuesday in the SEALs. Carter's expression softened momentarily. Your father would be proud, Kate. He had the same damn stubborn streak. The mention of her father, Patrick Sullivan, a SEAL who'd served with Carter years earlier before being killed in action, caught Kate by surprise. Carter rarely spoke of his former teammates, carrying their memories privately. He always said you were the best commander he ever served under, Kate replied quietly. And you're every bit the operator he was, Carter responded. Now let's finish this mission and get those encryption modules back where they belong. In the submarine's launch bay, the SEAL team was completing final equipment checks. 2 SDVs waited in the flooded chamber, each capable of carrying 4 operators in full tactical gear. Mitchell approached as Carter and Kate entered, his expression registering surprise at Kate's presence. Commander Sullivan will be accompanying us in an advisory capacity, Carter explained before Mitchell could object. Her first-hand knowledge of the vessel's layout and security systems will be invaluable. Mitchell nodded, professional enough not to question the decision. We're ready when you are, sir. Carter performed a final check of his tactical gear muscle memory, guiding his hands despite the years since he'd last prepared for combat operations. The familiar weight of the equipment awakened something primal, focusing his mind with crystalline clarity. Kate similarly checked her gear movements, precise despite her injuries. The tactical wetsuit concealed the worst of her wounds, while the structured equipment harness provided additional support for her compromised physiology. Comms check, Mitchell instructed as the team activated their underwater communication systems. Each operator acknowledged in sequence, their voices clear through the specialized equipment. Torres entered the launch bay as the final preparations were completed. Target vessel is currently 17 nautical miles from Somali territorial waters, maintaining speed of 15 knots. At current velocity, you have approximately 70 minutes before they cross into territorial waters. Carter nodded acknowledgement. Maintain position at optimal distance for extraction. If we're not back in 90 minutes, we'll be here, Torres assured him firmly. The SEAL team divided into 2 elements, each boarding one of the waiting SDVs. Carter and Kate joined Mitchell in the lead vehicle, while his executive officer commanded the second unit. Mission parameters remain unchanged, Carter reminded them as the launch bay began flooding for deployment. Secure the encryption modules first, then Volkov if possible. Maintain communications discipline. We don't know who might be monitoring Navy frequencies. When as water filled the chamber around them, Kate felt a momentary flash of anxiety, memories of being dragged beneath the waves still fresh in her mind. She pushed the reaction aside, focusing instead on the mission parameters. The encryption modules represented a critical national security vulnerability. Personal discomfort was irrelevant. The launch bay doors opened silently, revealing the dark expanse of ocean beyond. The SDVs engaged their silent propulsion systems, gliding out of the submarine like shadows detaching from a larger form. Carter glanced at Kate as they accelerated toward their target, noting the determination in her expression despite the ordeal she'd endured. The training he'd instilled in her years earlier hadn't just made her a SEAL. It had forged her into the kind of operator who could endure being thrown into the ocean to die and return to complete the mission. The water embraced them in darkness as they moved forward, leaving the safety of the Texas behind. Ahead lay a vessel carrying stolen American military secrets and the man who had orchestrated their theft. A man Carter had history with dating back to the Cold War's final chapters. The hunt was on, and this time Volkov wouldn't escape so easily. 17 miles away on the bridge of the cargo vessel, Dmitry Volkov studied the radar display with growing concern. Decades of operational experience had honed his instincts to razor sharpness. Something was wrong. The shipping patterns had changed in the past hour. Regular commercial traffic had subtly diverted from their section of the shipping lane. Increase speed, he ordered the helmsman. Push the engines to maximum. His second-in-command, Conrad Weiss, frowned. We're already running hot. The mechanics say, I don't care what they say. Volkov cut him off. We need to reach territorial waters within the hour. He turned to his communications specialist. Any word from our friend? The specialist shook his head. Admiral Harrington's last transmission indicated possible compromise. He advised maintaining radio silence except for emergency communications. Volkov's expression darkened. The operation had been meticulously planned over months. The extraction of the encryption modules from Norfolk had been executed flawlessly. The transport chain had functioned exactly as designed, until Commander Sullivan had somehow penetrated their security. Her unexpected appearance on his vessel had been concerning enough. The fact that she had specifically targeted the encryption modules indicated a security breach at the highest levels. Then there was the matter of her survival after being thrown overboard. Sullivan should be dead. The ocean should have claimed her hours ago. Yet Harrington's increasingly urgent communications suggested otherwise. Sweep for tracking devices again, Volkov ordered. Full spectrum, every frequency. Sir, we've already conducted 3 complete sweeps, Weiss protested. Nothing was found. Then do it again, Volkov snapped. Sullivan was naval intelligence. She wouldn't have come aboard without some method of marking the vessel. As his crew hurried to comply, Volkov moved to the tactical display, studying the possible approach vectors for an interdiction. The Americans would send a naval vessel, possibly a destroyer, from the Fifth Fleet operating in the region. Standard protocol would dictate hailing the ship, demanding inspection under maritime law. But Sullivan knew what they were carrying. She'd seen the encryption modules before her capture. That changed the equation significantly. The Americans couldn't risk standard interdiction procedures with assets of that sensitivity potentially at stake, which meant special operations. Fast boats or helicopters? Navy SEALs, most likely. Volkov allowed himself a thin smile. He'd spent decades studying American special operations tactics from Vietnam through Afghanistan. He knew their playbook as well as they did themselves. Prepare the defensive measures, he instructed Weiss, and move the package to the secure location. We may have company soon. Beneath the surface, the 2 SDVs moved silently through the dark water, their electric propulsion systems leaving minimal signature. Inside the lead vehicle, Carter monitored their approach vector, while Kate provided detailed information on the vessel's structural vulnerabilities. The ballast intake vents are located along the portside hull, she explained, indicating the location on the digital schematic. They lead directly to maintenance shafts that access the lower decks. During my initial infiltration, I found them unguarded and poorly secured. Mitchell nodded approvingly. Classic design vulnerability. Shipping companies retrofit these vessels so often they create security gaps without realizing it. Volkov will have tightened security since your escape, Carter noted. But he can't redesign the ship's architecture. The access points remain our best option. The SDVs continued their silent approach, maintaining depth to avoid surface detection. Through the viewports, occasional bioluminescent organisms created brief flashes in the darkness. Nature's own tactical indicators in the lightless environment. Kate felt the familiar pressure building in her ears as they maintained depth. Despite her recent trauma, the sensation brought a strange comfort. The ocean that had nearly claimed her life was now their ally, concealing their approach from the very people who had tried to kill her. Target vessel now at 500 meters, the navigator reported, maintaining course and speed toward Somali waters. Carter checked his tactical display. 62 minutes until they cross into territorial waters. We need to be aboard and have the package secured before then. The SDVs angled upward slightly, rising toward the underside of the cargo ship, now looming above them like a massive artificial reef. The vessel's engines created a distinctive acoustic signature, a low throbbing that vibrated through the water around them. Hull in visual range, the navigator confirmed, matching speed and trajectory now. Carter activated the tactical frequency. Bravo team maintain position 50 meters aft. Alpha will attempt initial penetration at the identified access point. Stand by for confirmation before approach. The lead SDV maneuvered carefully alongside the massive hull, its occupants scanning for the intake vents Kate had described. Mitchell operated the external manipulation arm, probing the metal surface for the access points. Got it, he confirmed after several tense minutes. Port side intake vent approximately 30 meters forward of the engine housing. Security grate appears intact, but not alarmed. Carter nodded to Kate in acknowledgement of her accurate intelligence. Proceed with entry protocol, standard infiltration sequence. Mitchell guided the SDV into position directly beneath the vent. Two team members prepared to exit the vehicle, checking their rebreathers and tactical equipment. Remember, Carter said as they prepared to deploy, Volkov is ex-Spetsnaz. He thinks differently than standard security. Expect unconventional countermeasures. The divers acknowledged the warning before exiting the SDV, swimming upward to the identified access point. Using specialized tools, they began working on the security grate, communicating their progress through hand signals, visible to the team remaining in the vehicle. After several minutes of careful manipulation, the first diver signaled success. The grate had been breached without triggering any obvious alarms. He disappeared into the opening, followed moments later by his partner. Inside the SDV, Carter, Kate, and Mitchell waited in tense silence for the confirmation signal. If the initial insertion team encountered immediate resistance, the entire operation would need to be recalibrated. 2 minutes passed, then 5. The tension inside the vehicle grew with each passing second. Finally, the communication system crackled to life. Alpha Actual, this is Pathfinder. Initial entry successful. Maintenance shaft secured. No opposition encountered. Carter exhaled slowly, sharing a brief look of satisfaction with Kate. Pathfinder copy successful entry. Proceed to Phase 2. Main element deploying now. The operation was underway. On the surface, the cargo vessel continued its journey, unaware of the shadow force assembling beneath its hull, preparing to strike. The maintenance shaft engulfed them in darkness, punctuated only by the rhythmic pulse of emergency lighting. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, mixing with the constant vibration of engines to create a disorienting sensory environment. Carter led the SEAL team through the narrow passage, moving with practiced silence despite the decades since his last field operation. His body remembered what his mind had filed away, muscle memory, guiding him through the infiltration protocols he'd helped develop years earlier. Behind him, Kate Sullivan moved with measured precision, each step carefully placed to manage her injuries without compromising the mission. The medical cocktail administered before deployment, pain suppressants, stimulants, and anti-inflammatory compounds, kept her functional, but couldn't entirely mask the trauma her body had endured. She pushed the discomfort aside, focusing instead on the mission parameters. The encryption modules represented a critical vulnerability that transcended personal suffering. Junction point ahead, she whispered, indicating a branching corridor on their tactical display. Engine room access to the right, crew quarters straight ahead, cargo holds to the left. Mitchell signaled the team to hold position while he consulted the operation plan. Alpha team will secure the engine room and communication center. Bravo continues to the cargo hold with Commanders Carter and Sullivan. The team divided with practiced efficiency, 4 operators peeling off toward the engine room, while Carter, Kate, and the remaining 4 SEALs continued toward the cargo holds. Each movement was choreographed, precise, the result of thousands of hours of training and operational experience. Time check, Carter murmured into his communication device. 53 minutes to territorial waters. The acknowledgements came back in sequence, each team member confirming awareness of the rapidly closing window. Once the vessel crossed into Somali waters, the operation's already tenuous legal standing would become even more complicated. They reached a secure hatchway leading to the lower deck. Kate examined the locking mechanism, recognition flashing in her eyes. Standard commercial grade, but they've added secondary bolting since my escape. Volkov's getting paranoid. One of the SEALs moved forward with a specialized breaching kit, applying a thin line of thermal paste around the lock housing. The compound ignited silently, burning at precisely the temperature needed to compromise the mechanism without triggering alarms. The hatch opened with a barely audible hiss of hydraulics. Beyond it, a dimly lit corridor stretched toward the cargo storage areas. Carter signaled for defensive formation, the team arranging themselves in a practiced configuration that maximized coverage while minimizing exposure. Alpha Team status. Mitchell's voice came through the tactical communications network. Engine room secured, came the response. Two tangos subdued non-lethal. Communications center locked down. Ship systems under control. Carter nodded in satisfaction. The first phase had proceeded perfectly. Too perfectly, perhaps. His decades of operational experience had taught him to distrust missions that unfolded without complications. Volkov was too experienced, too cunning to elude such smooth infiltration. Maintain vigilance, he instructed the team. This is proceeding too easily. They advanced through the corridor, passing storage compartments and maintenance access points. Each potentially concealed opposition, yet they encountered no resistance. The absence of security personnel raised Carter's suspicions further. Kate seemed to share his concern, her movements becoming increasingly cautious as they approached the main cargo hold. During my captivity, this section was guarded continuously, she whispered. At least 2 men at all times. Carter signaled the point man to hold position while he assessed the situation. The tactical display showed no heat signatures in the immediate vicinity, no indication of personnel or active security measures. Either Volkov had withdrawn his security forces or they were being led into an ambush. Alternate approach, he decided, indicating a maintenance shaft running parallel to the main corridor. We'll access the cargo hold from the secondary entrance. The team repositioned, moving through the narrow service passage with practiced ease despite the confined space. The air grew noticeably warmer, heavy with the smell of diesel and metal. Below them, the ship's engines continued their steady rhythm, unaffected by the silent infiltration occurring above. They reached a ventilation grate overlooking the main cargo hold. Carter peered through the slats, his experienced gaze taking in the scene below. Shipping containers arranged in orderly rows, most bearing commercial markings. But toward the center of the hold stood a specialized container with military markings partially obscured by hastily applied paint. Target identified, he whispered. Standard Navy transport container, serial markings consistent with cryptographic equipment shipments. Kate moved beside him, confirming his assessment with a slight nod. That's it. The encryption modules are inside. Carter studied the surrounding area, searching for signs of security personnel or defensive measures. The hold appeared deserted, the container seemingly unguarded. His instincts screamed warning. Thermal scan, he instructed one of the SEALs, who immediately deployed a specialized imaging device. The results confirmed his suspicions. While no personnel were visible, the container itself showed unusual heat signatures consistent with active electronics. Security measures almost certainly. They've rigged it, Carter concluded. Proximity sensors probably linked to alarm systems or possibly destructive measures. Kate's expression hardened. Volkov would rather destroy the modules than allow their recovery. Standard Russian doctrine, Carter agreed. If capture is inevitable, deny the enemy the intelligence value. He considered their options, weighing the diminishing time against the risks. We need a diversion. Mitchell's voice came through the tactical network. Alpha Team can provide. We have control of the ship's systems, including emergency protocols. Carter nodded. Trigger the fire suppression system in the forward holds. That should draw any security personnel away from our position. While they waited for the diversion, Carter turned to Kate. You recognize the container security. She studied the barely visible systems through the grate. Naval cryptographic standard with modifications. Volkov has added redundant triggering mechanisms. I can bypass the primary systems, but we'll need to neutralize the secondary measures simultaneously. Carter assigned 2 SEALs to support Kate with the disarming procedure, while he and the remaining operators prepared to secure the area once they entered the hold. The plan was taking shape, adapting to the circumstances, as all good operations must. The ship's alarms suddenly blared to life, emergency lights pulsing as the fire suppression system activated in the forward compartments. The diversion was underway. Move now, Carter ordered the team, immediately removing the ventilation grate and descending into the cargo hold using tactical ropes. They landed silently, spreading out to secure the perimeter, while Kate and her assigned specialists approached the container. The main cargo bay remained eerily empty, the security personnel apparently responding to the fire alert as anticipated. Kate worked at quickly, her training in cryptographic security measures evident as she identified the access panels and security systems. Primary system is a standard naval electronic lock with biometric confirmation. They've bypassed the biometrics with a hardware bridge, but left the electronic trigger intact. One of the SEALs produced a specialized decryption device, attaching it to the identified access panel. Initiating bypass sequence. While they worked on the primary system, Kate circled the container, identifying the secondary security measures. Pressure plates beneath the container wired to what appears to be an incendiary charge. Classic Spetsnaz methodology. Carter joined her, examining the setup. We need to neutralize both systems simultaneously. If either triggers, the modules are lost. The decryption specialist looked up from his device. Primary system bypass ready on your mark, sir. Carter positioned himself beside the pressure plate mechanisms. On my count, 3, 2, 1, execute. The primary electronic lock disengaged with a soft click, while Carter simultaneously inserted specialized wedges to maintain the pressure plate's position as they accessed the container. The secondary security system remained armed but stable, no longer triggered by the container's movement. We're in, the specialist confirmed. Primary security neutralized. The container door swung open, revealing rows of specialized military hardware. At the center, secured in reinforced cases, sat the encryption modules, compact black boxes containing the keys to America's most sensitive communications networks. Kate moved forward, examining the modules to confirm their authenticity. Serial numbers matched the stolen inventory. This is definitely the package. Carter activated his secure communication link. Target acquired, preparing for extraction. As they began securing the modules for transport, Mitchell's voice came through the tactical network with unexpected urgency. Be advised, we're detecting movement throughout the vessel. Security personnel returning to stations. Carter frowned. The diversion shouldn't have been resolved so quickly. Status of fire suppression systems? Still active, but security teams are ignoring the alerts. They appear to be implementing some kind of predetermined protocol. The realization hit Carter and Kate simultaneously. They know we're aboard, she said, voicing what they both understood. Accelerate extraction, Carter ordered. All teams converge on the primary exfiltration point. The SEALs moved with increased urgency, securing the encryption modules in specialized transport containers designed to withstand water exposure during their underwater escape. Carter established a defensive perimeter around the cargo bay entrance, anticipating opposition. Time check, he requested. 37 minutes to territorial waters, came the response. Their window was closing rapidly. The first shots came without warning, suppressed weapons fire from an adjacent corridor. 2 security personnel had appeared, firing controlled bursts toward the SEAL team's position. Carter responded immediately, his reflexes undiminished by age, returning precisely aimed fire that neutralized one attacker while forcing the second into cover. Contact front, he reported calmly. Extraction route compromised. More security personnel began converging on their position, moving with the coordinated precision of former military operators. Volkov had staffed his vessel with professionals, not typical maritime security. The SEALs established a defensive formation, creating overlapping fields of fire that momentarily halted the advancing security forces. Kate remained with the encryption modules, ensuring they were properly secured for transport, while the tactical situation deteriorated around them. We need an alternate extraction route, Carter determined, assessing their increasingly limited options. Kate glanced at the tactical display. There's a maintenance shaft 2 levels down that connects to the ballast system. We could use it to reach the SDVs. Carter nodded, recognizing the logic of her suggestion. Mitchell, coordinate with Alpha Team. Create a diversion at the main deck level to draw security forces upward while we move the package down. Copy that. Diversion in 3 minutes. The gunfire intensified as additional security personnel joined the engagement. The SEALs returned fire with disciplined precision, each shot carefully placed to neutralize threats without risking damage to the surrounding vessel. A stray round in the wrong location could potentially compromise the hull integrity or trigger secondary explosions from fuel or ammunition stores. Move now, Carter ordered, as the sound of explosions echoed from the upper decks. Alpha Team had initiated their diversion, drawing attention away from the cargo hold. 2-man teams leapfrogged coverage to the access shaft. The SEALs began their coordinated withdrawal, maintaining suppressive fire while moving in alternating pairs toward the identified escape route. Kate and one operator secured the encryption modules in specialized backpack containers designed to maintain watertight integrity during underwater transit. As they reached the access shaft, Carter took rear guard position, covering their withdrawal with precisely placed shots that forced the pursuing security forces to seek cover. Despite the decades since his last field operation, his marksmanship remained exceptional, each round finding its target with surgical precision. "Commander," Kate called from the shaft entrance, "we need to move now." Carter fired a final suppressive burst before withdrawing into the shaft, securing the access hatch behind them. The narrow passage descended steeply into the bowels of the vessel, eventually connecting to the ballast control systems near the waterline. "Alpha Team status," he requested as they descended. "Heavy opposition on the main deck," came Mitchell's response, his voice calm despite the sounds of gunfire in the background. "We've created the diversion as requested, but our extraction window is closing. Multiple hostiles between our position and the primary exit point. Maintain position as long as possible," Carter instructed. "Once we've cleared the lower level with the package, withdraw to the secondary extraction point." The team continued their descent through the maintenance shaft, the distant sounds of combat growing fainter as they penetrated deeper into the vessel's infrastructure. The air grew increasingly humid, heavy with the smell of salt and metal. They reached the ballast control room, a cramped chamber filled with valves, pumps, and monitoring equipment. Kate moved immediately to the control panel, her familiarity with naval architecture evident as she assessed the systems. "We can flood the adjacent compartment and use the emergency access hatch to reach the exterior hull," she determined. "From there, it's a direct route to the SDV pickup point." Carter nodded approval. "Do it." While Kate reconfigured the ballast systems, Carter established communication with the waiting SDVs. "Extraction team, this is actual. Package secured. Moving to alternate extraction point on port side lower quadrant adjacent to ballast release valves." "Copy, alternate extraction," came the response. SDVs repositioning now. The distant thunder of gunfire continued above them, evidence of the ongoing battle between Alpha Team and the vessel's security forces. Carter checked the mission timer on his tactical display. 28 minutes until the ship crossed into territorial waters. Their window was closing rapidly. "Ballast systems reconfigured," Kate reported. "Adjacent compartment beginning controlled flooding now." Warning alarms activated throughout the vessel as the ballast systems responded to her commands. The security forces would undoubtedly recognize this as an attempted breach, further complicating Alpha Team's already precarious position. "Alpha, be advised," Carter transmitted. "Hull integrity alarms activating shipwide. Expect increased opposition as security forces respond." "Understood," Mitchell replied, his voice steady despite the deteriorating tactical situation. "We'll hold as long as necessary." The adjacent compartment flooded rapidly, water rising to equalize with the exterior ocean pressure. Once equalized, the emergency access hatch could be opened without causing catastrophic flooding throughout the vessel, a standard safety feature in modern ships. "Pressure equalizing," Kate confirmed, monitoring the gauges. 30 seconds to hatch viability." Carter distributed rebreathers to the team, each operator checking their equipment with practiced efficiency. The specialized gear would allow underwater operation for up to 30 minutes, more than sufficient for the short transit to the waiting SDVs. "Hatch viable," Kate announced. "We can proceed." Carter led the way, manually releasing the safety locks on the emergency hatch. Water had entirely filled the adjacent compartment, creating an improvised airlock between the dry interior of the vessel and the ocean beyond. "Rebreathers active," he ordered. Each operator activated their equipment before following Carter through the hatch into the flooded compartment. The transition from the vessel's dry interior to the water-filled chamber was disorienting, artificial lighting refracting through the turbulent water. Carter maintained his bearings, leading the team toward the external access hatch, visible at the far end of the compartment. They moved with practiced underwater efficiency, their specialized training evident in each coordinated movement. The encryption modules, secured in waterproof containers, were distributed between two operators to ensure redundancy should one encounter difficulties. Carter reached the external hatch, examining the release mechanism. Unlike the interior hatches, this one required significant physical force to operate, a deliberate design feature to prevent accidental activation. He gestured for two seals to assist their combined strength necessary to disengage the safety locks. The hatch released with a sudden rush of pressure, the equalizing water pressure pushing it outward into the ocean beyond. Carter led the team through the opening, emerging into the dark waters surrounding the vessel. Outside, the massive hull of the cargo ship loomed above them like an artificial cliff face. Carter oriented himself using the tactical navigation system, identifying the designated rendezvous coordinates where the SDVs should be waiting. They began swimming parallel to the hull, maintaining depth to avoid detection from the vessel's surface sensors. The weight of the encryption modules slowed their progress slightly, but the team maintained formation, each operator covering designated sectors as they moved. Kate swam beside Carter, her movements betraying the physical toll of her injuries despite the specialized equipment and medical support. Her determination remained undiminished, focus evident, even through the limited visibility of her dive mask. They reached the rendezvous coordinates, the SDVs waiting in position as planned. The extraction vehicles had maintained station keeping at a safe distance, their minimal electronic signatures reducing the risk of detection by the vessel's underwater sensors. Carter signaled the team forward, each operator methodically boarding the waiting SDVs. The encryption modules were secured in specialized compartments, their vital intelligence finally returning to proper custody. As the last team members boarded, Carter established communication with Mitchell. Alpha Team package is secure and extraction underway. Begin your withdrawal immediately. Negative on withdrawal, came Mitchell's unexpected response. Our primary and secondary extraction routes are compromised. Heavy opposition throughout the vessel. We're pinned down on the port side upper deck. Carter exchanged glances with Kate, both recognizing the implications. Alpha Team was trapped, unable to reach their designated extraction point. Without intervention, they would be captured or killed once the vessel reached Somali waters. Hold position, Carter instructed. We're coming back for you. The SDV commander shook his head. Sir, with respect, our primary mission was securing the encryption modules. Those need to be returned to the Texas immediately. I don't leave my people behind, Carter replied, his tone brooking no argument. One SDV will return to the Texas with the package. The second will remain to extract Alpha Team. Kate immediately volunteered. I'll stay with you. Carter assessed her condition, noting the telltale signs of physical strain despite her determined expression. You've already accomplished the impossible, Kate. Get the modules back to Torres. Sir. That's an order, Commander, Carter said firmly. Complete the mission. I'll handle the extraction. After a moment of visible internal conflict, Kate nodded. Yes, sir. Carter transferred to the second SDV with 4 operators, leaving Kate and the remaining team to transport the encryption modules back to the waiting submarine. The vehicles separated, one descending toward the Texas while the other maintained position near the vessel. Alpha, what's your exact position? Carter requested, studying the vessel schematic on the tactical display. Upper deck port side adjacent to lifeboat station 3, Mitchell reported. We have wounded. 2 operators with non-critical injuries, still combat effective. Carter assessed the tactical situation. A direct approach to the upper deck would expose the extraction team to concentrated fire from the vessel's security forces. They needed an alternative approach. Can you reach the port side communications array? He asked, identifying a potential extraction point on the schematic. Negative. Too much open space between our position and that location. Carter considered their dwindling options. The vessel would cross into territorial waters in less than 20 minutes. Once that happened, any military intervention would constitute a significant international incident. Stand by, he instructed, making a decision. We're implementing Contingency Bravo. The SDV ascended toward the surface, maintaining position just below the waterline to avoid visual detection. Carter distributed specialized equipment to his team, grappling systems designed for rapid vertical ascent along the vessel's hull. We'll ascend directly to their position, he explained. Create a perimeter defense while they rappel down to our position. The SDV can extract in multiple trips if necessary. The team acknowledged the plan, each operator checking their equipment with practiced efficiency. Carter established communication with the Texas. Captain Torres, be advised, we're initiating Contingency Bravo to extract Alpha Team. Request suppressive fire support from your deck guns on my mark. Understood, Torres responded. Be advised, Commander, we're detecting increased communications traffic from nearby vessels. Possible coalition naval forces responding to the situation. Acknowledged. We'll complete extraction before they can intercept. The SDV surfaced just enough to allow the team to deploy the operators, emerging silently into the night air. The cargo vessel towered above them, running lights illuminating portions of the hull, while leaving others in deep shadow. Carter led the ascent, the specialized grappling system engaging with pneumatic precision. The barbed titanium hooks penetrated the vessel's outer hull, providing secure anchoring points for their climb. They ascended rapidly, using the shadows for concealment as they approached Alpha Team's position. Gunfire continued above them, evidence of the ongoing engagement between Mitchell's team and the vessel's security forces. Carter could make out muzzle flashes from multiple positions, indicating a coordinated attempt to overwhelm the cornered SEAL unit. They reached the upper deck level, taking position along the exterior hull, just below the engagement area. Carter established visual confirmation of Alpha Team's location, a defensive position using cargo containers for cover, surrounded by advancing security personnel. "Alpha, this is actual," he transmitted. "We're in position below your location. Prepare for immediate extraction on my signal." "Copy that," Mitchell responded, the relief evident in his voice, despite his professional demeanor. Carter positioned his team for maximum coverage. Each operator assigned specific sectors of fire to create an effective extraction corridor. "On my mark, Torres will initiate suppressive fire against the vessel's forward sections. Use that distraction to begin your withdrawal. We'll cover your descent." He established final communication with the Texas. "Torres, we're in position. Initiate suppressive fire on the vessel's forward deck. Maintain for 30 seconds. "Copy that." Suppressive fire commencing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. The Texas's deck guns opened fire, carefully calibrated rounds impacting the vessel's forward sections. The precision bombardment avoided critical systems while creating sufficient chaos to disorient the security forces. Warning shots essentially, but delivered with surgical accuracy that demonstrated overwhelming firepower. Carter signaled his team to initiate covering fire, their suppressed weapons targeting specific security personnel with practiced precision. The combined effect created a momentary advantage for Alpha Team. "Move now," Carter ordered. Mitchell and his operators immediately abandoned their defensive position, rushing toward the extraction point, while Carter's team maintained suppressive fire. The first SEAL reached the edge of the deck, quickly attaching to the rappelling system Carter had established. One by one, Alpha Team descended, each operator covering the next in sequence, until only Mitchell remained on deck. The security forces had begun to regroup, recognizing the extraction attempt in progress. "Last man," Mitchell reported as he reached the extraction point. "Go," Carter urged, maintaining covering fire as Mitchell began his descent. A sudden movement caught Carter's attention, a figure emerging from the vessel's bridge wing, taking deliberate aim at Mitchell's exposed position. Even at that distance, Carter recognized him instantly. Volkov. The former Spetsnaz operator fired with practiced precision, his round narrowly missing Mitchell as he continued his descent. Carter adjusted his aim, returning fire that forced Volkov momentarily into cover. Their eyes met across the distance, recognition passing between two operatives whose careers had intersected decades earlier in the shadowed conflicts of the Cold War. Volkov's expression registered surprise, clearly not expecting to encounter Carter personally. Mitchell reached the waiting extraction team below all of Alpha Team, now successfully withdrawn from the vessel. Carter maintained his position, covering their reorganization while keeping Volkov pinned down. "All personnel clear," one of the SEALs reported. "Ready for extraction." Carter began his own withdrawal, maintaining suppressive fire as he descended toward the waiting team. Volkov emerged from cover, firing a controlled burst that impacted near Carter's position. "Time to end this, American," Volkov called out in heavily accented English. "You've interfered with my operations for the last time." Carter continued his controlled descent, ignoring the provocation. Operational discipline superseded personal vendettas regardless of their history. The mission parameters were clear: secure the encryption modules and extract all personnel safely. "It's over, Volkov," he responded simply. "The modules are already gone." Volkov's expression hardened as he realized the implications. The primary objective of the operation, the encryption modules, had already been secured and transported away from the vessel. His mission had failed. "This isn't over," Volkov promised, continuing to fire as Carter reached the extraction team. The SDV was waiting just below the surface, the operators efficiently boarding in sequence. Carter took final rearguard position, covering their withdrawal as they returned to the submersible vehicle. "All personnel aboard," the SDV pilot confirmed. "Ready to dive." Carter took a final look at the vessel above them, Volkov's silhouette visible against the illuminated bridge. Their decades-long operational chess match would continue another day. For now, the immediate mission was complete. Dive, Carter ordered the SDV, immediately submerging beneath the waves. They descended rapidly, putting distance between themselves and the cargo vessel as they returned toward the Texas. Carter checked the mission timer 12 minutes until the vessel would cross into territorial waters. They had succeeded with minimal margin for error. All stations, mission complete, he reported. Package secured, all personnel extracted, returning to base. The acknowledgments came through clearly, professional satisfaction, evident despite the operational formality. They had accomplished the near impossible, infiltrating a hostile vessel, recovering critical intelligence assets, and extracting without casualties. The SDV rendezvoused with the Texas, the submarine maintaining position just beyond detection range of coalition naval forces now converging on the region. The extraction hatch opened, allowing the team to board directly into the submarine's dry dock chamber. Medical personnel immediately moved to assist the injured operators from Alpha Team, their wounds fortunately non-critical as reported. Carter conducted a rapid head count, confirming all personnel were accounted for before reporting to the submarine's command center. Captain Torres met him in the quarter. Modules secured and authenticated, he confirmed. Commander Sullivan is already working with our communications team to assess the potential compromise extent. Carter nodded in satisfaction. In our other situation, Director Reynolds has maintained our operational deniability, Torres replied. As far as official channels are concerned, the Texas was conducting routine underwater surveillance when we detected a vessel of interest. The boarding operation was a standard maritime interdiction to investigate suspected weapons trafficking. And Harrington, that's where it gets interesting, Torres said, his expressions suggesting significant developments. While you were conducting the extraction, Reynolds implemented a counterintelligence operation at the Pentagon. Harrington was detained while attempting to access classified communications channels outside his authorization parameters. Carter absorbed this information with grim satisfaction. The circle was closing around the compromised admiral. I need to debrief with Kate, he said. Where is she? Communications center, Torres directed. She's been working non-stop since returning with the modules. Carter found Kate in the submarine's specialized communications facility, surrounded by technical experts examining the recovered encryption modules. Despite her obvious exhaustion and injuries, she maintained laser focus on the assessment process. She looked up as he entered, relief evident in her expression. Alpha Team, extracted successfully, he confirmed. 2 minor injuries, all personnel accounted for. The tension visibly eased from her shoulders. The modules are intact. Preliminary assessment indicates they weren't compromised, but will need comprehensive testing to confirm. Carter nodded, understanding the implications. If the encryption keys had been copied or transmitted before their recovery, significant communications networks would require complete overhaul. Harrington has been detained, he informed her. Reynolds implemented countermeasures while we were operating. Kate's expression hardened at the mention of the admiral's name. He betrayed everything the uniform stands for. People lose their way, Carter said quietly. Power, money, ideology. The justifications vary, but the betrayal remains the same. What happens now? The official version will differ significantly from reality, Carter explained. International sensitivities require certain operational details remain classified. Officially, this was a routine maritime interdiction that discovered stolen military hardware. And unofficially, you prevented a catastrophic intelligence compromise and exposed a high-level security breach, Carter stated simply. When you're recovered, there will be debriefings, assessments, and likely a significant recognition of your actions, though probably not publicly. Kate nodded in understanding. The nature of their work often precluded public acknowledgement, regardless of the significance of their actions. What about Volkov? She asked. He escaped this time, Carter acknowledged. The vessel crossed into territorial waters before coalition forces could implement a formal interdiction. By then, he had likely already departed. He'll resurface, Kate predicted. Yes, Carter agreed. Men like Volkov always do. Torres entered the communications center, his expression suggesting urgent developments. We've just received updated orders from Fleet Command. We're to proceed immediately to rendezvous with the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Group for secure transfer of the recovered assets. Reynolds' influence, Carter inquired. Directly from the Secretary of Defense, Torres corrected. This has escalated to the highest levels. Carter exchanged glances with Kate, both recognizing the implications. The recovery of the encryption modules and exposure of Harrington's betrayal had created significant ripples throughout the defense establishment. How soon until we rendezvous? Carter asked. Approximately 6 hours at maximum safe speed, Torres replied. We've been authorized to surface once we're beyond surveillance range of the Somali coast. Carter nodded. I'll prepare a comprehensive after-action report for transmission to Reynolds. He'll need complete details before the official debriefings begin. As Torres departed to implement the new orders, Kate finally allowed her professional demeanor to relax slightly, the full weight of the past 72 hours evident in her expression. You should get some rest, Carter suggested. The medical team can... I'm fine, she interrupted, automatically the standard response of operators trained to push beyond normal human limitations. Carter recognized the pattern he demonstrated it countless times himself during his active service years. Kate, you were thrown overboard, survived exposure hypothermia, a shark attack, and then participated in a high-risk extraction operation. Even by SEAL standards, that's exceeding operational parameters. A ghost of a smile crossed her features. Just following my training, Commander. Carter allowed himself a moment of pride in his former student. Your father would be exceptionally proud of what you accomplished today. The mention of her father, Carter's former teammate, brought a momentary vulnerability to Kate's expression. I hope so. I know so, Carter assured her. Patrick always said you had the same stubborn determination he did. He was right. Kate nodded, accepting the rare personal moment before returning to operational focus. What about Harrington's network? He couldn't have been operating alone. Reynolds will implement comprehensive counterintelligence protocols, Carter explained. Every operation Harrington touched will be reviewed, every contact investigated. It will be thorough but discreet. The public acknowledgement of a compromised admiral would create strategic vulnerabilities we can't afford. The quiet professionals, Kate murmured, referencing the unofficial motto of the special operations community. Always, Carter agreed. Now get some actual rest before you collapse. That's an order, Commander. Kate finally relented, acknowledging her physical limitations with a reluctant nod. 6 hours until rendezvous. Approximately. Wake me in 4, she requested. I want to complete the technical assessment of the modules before transfer. Carter recognized the request for what it was: not mere dedication to duty, but a need for closure for completing the mission she'd nearly died to accomplish. 4 hours, he agreed. After Kate departed for the medical bay, Carter made his way to the submarine's secure communications facility. The comprehensive after-action report would require careful composition, balancing operational security with the necessary details for proper assessment. He worked methodically, documenting each phase of the operation with professional precision. The infiltration, the recovery of the encryption modules, the extraction under fire. Each element captured in language that conveyed the tactical realities without unnecessary embellishment. Torres joined him as he completed the report. We've received confirmation that coalition naval forces have implemented a quarantine around the cargo vessel. Volkov is confirmed to have departed via helicopter before they established the perimeter. Carter nodded, unsurprised by the development. He survived this long by recognizing when a position is untenable. The intelligence community is already processing the implications of Harrington's compromise, Torres continued. Preliminary assessment suggests his access to nuclear command and control protocols was limited by compartmentalization, but the potential damage remains significant. A comprehensive damage assessment will take months, Carter acknowledged. Every system he accessed, every operation he influenced, will require scrutiny. Torres hesitated before adding, there's something else. Director Reynolds indicated that forensic analysis of Harrington's communications revealed references to a secondary operation codenamed Crimson Sunset. Details are limited, but it appears to involve additional assets beyond the encryption modules. Carter absorbed this information with growing concern. If the encryption modules were merely one component of a larger operation, the strategic implications could be even more significant than initially assessed. Forward all available intelligence on Crimson Sunset to my secure terminal, he requested. I'll review it before we rendezvous with the carrier group. Torres nodded. Will do. And Commander, for what it's worth, what you and Sullivan accomplished today was extraordinary. Few operations of this complexity succeed without casualties. We got lucky, Carter responded modestly. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Torres countered. Your team was prepared and you created the opportunity. That's not luck, that's exceptional leadership. After Torres departed, Carter remained in the communications center, reviewing the operational data and considering the wider implications. Harrington's betrayal and Volkov's involvement suggested a coordinated effort to compromise American strategic systems, a continuation of Cold War methodologies adapted for the modern era. The submarine hummed around him, its nuclear propulsion systems, driving them steadily toward the rendezvous with the carrier group. The encryption modules were secure, Harrington was in custody, and all operational personnel had been recovered successfully. By any objective measure, the mission had been an unqualified success. Yet Carter recognized the truth that decades of operational experience had taught him one battle won did not end the war. Volkov remained at large. Crimson Sunset, whatever it entailed, remained operational. The larger strategic chess match continued. 4 hours later, as promised, Carter made his way to the medical bay to wake Kate for the final technical assessment. He found her already awake, reviewing documentation on a secure tablet, despite the doctor's obvious disapproval. I should have known better than to expect you to actually rest, Carter commented as he entered. Kate looked up, a hint of her old determination returning to her expression, despite the visible evidence of her ordeal. The technical team completed their preliminary assessment. The encryption modules appear intact with no evidence of duplication or transmission. Good news, Carter acknowledged, but not why I'm here. He handed her a secure tablet displaying the limited intelligence regarding Crimson Sunset. Reynolds forwarded this. It appears Harrington and Volkov were involved in something larger than just the encryption modules. Kate reviewed the information, her expression growing increasingly concerned as she absorbed the implications. Multiple assets targeted, distributed operational cells, timeline extending over at least 18 months. She looked up. This is a comprehensive strategic compromise attempt. That's my assessment as well, Carter confirmed. The encryption modules were valuable, but they appear to be just one component of a broader operation. Which means our work isn't finished, Kate concluded. Carter nodded, recognizing the determination in her expression, the same unyielding commitment to duty that had carried her through the impossible circumstances of the past 72 hours. One mission at a time, Commander, he reminded her. First, we complete the transfer of these assets and ensure they're properly secured. Then we debrief with Reynolds and assess next steps regarding Crimson Sunset. And Volkov. He'll resurface, Carter stated with certainty born of decades tracking the Russian operative. Men like him always do, and when he does, we'll be waiting, Kate finished. The submarine continued its silent progress through the depths, carrying them toward the rendezvous point where the next phase of their mission would begin. The ocean that had nearly claimed Kate's life now served as their shield, concealing them from adversaries who would stop at nothing to compromise America's most sensitive security infrastructure. The battle for the encryption modules had been won. The larger war continued. But as Carter had taught Kate during her training years earlier, the ocean doesn't care about your plans or your enemies. It only respects those with the discipline to master it. They had mastered it together, and in doing so, they had turned what should have been a catastrophic intelligence compromise into a strategic victory. 1 month later at the Pentagon, Kate Sullivan stood at attention in her formal dress uniform as the Secretary of the Navy completed the citation reading. The private ceremony, attended only by select officials with appropriate security clearances, acknowledged her extraordinary actions while carefully omitting operational details that remain classified. For exceptional valor and dedication to duty in the face of extreme adversity, the Secretary concluded affixing the Distinguished Service Cross to her uniform. Your actions exemplify the highest traditions of naval service. Kate maintained her professional composure throughout the ceremony, accepting the recognition with appropriate humility despite the significance of the award. Few intelligence officers ever received such distinction, particularly for operations that officially never happened. Carter watched from the small audience, his own contribution to the operation acknowledged, through a separate ceremony days earlier. His pride in Kate's accomplishment was evident, though tempered by the knowledge that Crimson Sunset remained an active threat. Following the ceremony, they met briefly in a secure conference room away from the ceremonial formalities. The technical assessment is complete, Kate informed him. No compromise of the encryption modules occurred before recovery. All potentially affected systems have been recertified. And Harrington, Carter inquired. Cooperating with investigators, she replied. His testimony has already led to the identification of 3 additional compromised assets within the intelligence community. Carter nodded unsurprised. Once the initial betrayal was exposed, subsequent revelations typically followed as compromised individuals sought to mitigate their eventual sentencing. Reynolds has authorized the formation of a specialized task force to address Crimson Sunset. Kate continued. He's requested both of us to participate. In what capacity? Operational planning and intelligence assessment, she explained. Not fieldwork, if that's what you're concerned about. A slight smile crossed Carter's features. Trying to keep the old man behind a desk. Trying to leverage decades of operational experience where it's most valuable, Kate countered diplomatically. Carter considered the proposal. His official retirement had been interrupted by Kate's capture and the subsequent operation. Returning to full active status wasn't his initial intention, but the threat represented by Crimson Sunset demanded experienced oversight. When do we start? He asked simply. Immediately, Kate replied. Reynolds has established a secure facility at Quantico for the task force. Initial briefing tomorrow morning. Carter nodded in acceptance. The quiet retirement he'd envisioned and would wait a bit longer. Some threats transcended personal preference, demanding response from those with the capacity to address them. One last thing, Kate added, her tone shifting slightly. The technical team examining Harrington's communications discovered something unexpected. References to Berlin, 1989. Carter's expression remained neutral, though his attention sharpened noticeably. What specifically? Operation Winterfrost, Kate replied. Your operation against the Stasi infiltration network. That operation remains classified, Carter noted carefully. Yes, Kate acknowledged, which makes Harrington's knowledge of specific operational details concerning. Details he shared with Volkov. Carter absorbed this information, the implications stirring memories of operations long classified and nearly forgotten. Volkov lost more than professional pride in Berlin, he said after a moment. He lost agents he'd personally recruited and trained, some he considered family. Making this personal, Kate concluded. It was always personal with Volkov, Carter corrected. The professional veneer simply provided plausible deniability. Crimson Sunset may have strategic objectives, but the operational methodology suggests something more targeted. Kate studied her former mentor, recognizing there were aspects of the Berlin operation that remained undisclosed even decades later. Will this history compromise your objectivity regarding the task force? No, Carter replied without hesitation. But it provides context that may prove valuable in anticipating Volkov's next move. They departed the Pentagon together, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the ceremonial grounds. The imposing structure behind them represented the institutional power of American military might, yet both recognize that the most critical battles often occurred in shadows fought by operators whose contributions would never be publicly acknowledged. I recommended you for SEAL training because I saw something of your father in you, Carter said as they walked. The same determination, the same unyielding commitment to mission success. Kate glanced at him, surprised by the personal observation. Carter rarely discussed his reasons for supporting her application to the traditionally male-dominated SEAL training program. But you've exceeded even those expectations, he continued. What you accomplished surviving being thrown overboard, the swim the shark encounter, and then returning to complete the mission, that's beyond what most operators could manage, regardless of gender or experience. I had good training, Kate replied simply. Carter smiled slightly at the deflection. Tomorrow we begin planning how to dismantle Crimson Sunset and finally bring Volkov to justice. It won't be easy, and it likely won't be quick. The ocean taught me patience, Kate responded. Some battles can't be won through force alone. Sometimes surviving until conditions change is victory enough. Carter nodded in approval. The philosophical understanding demonstrated wisdom beyond her years. The recognition that operational success sometimes required strategic patience rather than tactical aggression. The ocean doesn't care about your plans, he quoted, repeating the mantra he taught her during training. It only respects those with the discipline to master it, Kate completed. They reached the parking facility, preparing to depart for separate destinations before reuniting at Quantico the following morning. The mission continued as it always did, different objectives, different adversaries, but the same unwavering commitment to securing America's interests against all threats. The battle for the encryption modules had been won. The larger war against Crimson Sunset and Volkov's network was just beginning. But as they had proven in the depths of the Indian Ocean, when failure seemed inevitable, and survival, impossible determination and training could transform certain defeat into unexpected victory. The ocean had taught them both that lesson, and neither would ever forget it.